Well, welcome back to another episode of Articulating with David Barnett. My name is Anna Thornton. I'm the gallery assistant here at the David Barnett Gallery. And with me today, as always, is David Barnett, the owner and director of the gallery. So today our topic is our top tier artworks in the collection. These are pieces that are a very high caliber in terms of art historical significance, price point, and collectability. If you're watching with us today, you might notice we're in a little bit of a different setting than our usual table upstairs. Since all of the pieces we're going to be talking about, well, most of them, they're hanging in this room, we thought we would change things up and do a little bit of a talk and tour. So with that, let's dive right into our first piece.
Excellent.
Great. So today we're going to be talking about Marilyn. This is a silk screen print by Andy Warhol with some hand-painted areas. It was created in circa 1962, which is actually the year that Marilyn Monroe passed away. And when I was researching this piece, I found a quote by Andy Warhol talking about the silkscreen process. He said, "My first experiments with screens were heads of Troy Donahue and Warren Beatty. And then when Marilyn Monroe happened to die that month, I got the idea to make screens of her beautiful face, and those were the first Marilyns." And what I really loved about that quote was his phrasing of Marilyn happened to pass away, because you're always talking about the best pieces of art reflect the times they were created in. And so I feel like this piece absolutely does that, because Warhol was responding to a current event, and now it's an icon.
Classic.
Yeah. But do you have any thoughts, David, about what makes this a piece that's very collectible? And
Yes, of course, Andy Warhol being the number one pop artist, an icon in his own right, and as you were saying, the importance of Marilyn Monroe as an icon. And what's very special about this particular work of art is the provenance and the history of it. And it belonged to Andy Warhol's nephew. And Andy Warhol's nephew was studying to be a priest. And their name, of course, was Warhola. They were Polish. And so Andy was supporting his nephew through school to become a priest. And so Andy had given him a key to the studio. And so the story goes that Andy was supposed to meet his nephew at the studio to give him some money because he was a poor, starving student. And Andy didn't show up that day, and his nephew saw on the wall a set of 4 Marilyns. This was one of them.
Yes.
It was a canvas with 4 pieces, which was very typical of the way Warhol worked. He worked, in series and with multiples of an image, or whatever the subject was. And so his nephew took a knife and he removed 3 of the 4 silkscreen hand painted artworks, and he took them. So you can see how rough cut it is around the edges, and we framed it archivally just as it was when he removed it, in 1962. And the provenance is impeccable. It goes all the way back to Warhol's studio by his relatives. So we're selling it on behalf of the current owner. It's passed through a few hands, and it is the most valuable piece in the gallery at this time. The highest price of an Andy Warhol at auction was a 2024 Marilyn Monroe that Christie's sold. It was a 40-inch square piece, almost identical to ours. The colors, everything was very similar. And that was sold for $196 million.
That's right.
So it's a phenomenon, really, in the art market. The other phenomenon for me as an art appraiser since 1975 is the interesting fact about Warhol and his prints. The values are telling us that these are paintings, but they are basically silkscreen prints. But then they're hand painted, the most valuable ones, including this one.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. When something is of a high enough value, the perception is it's not a drawing or a print, it's a painting. There was a sale in New York of an Edvard Munch pastel sketch of the famous painting that he did, the Scream, and there were 4 sketches of the Scream, and one sold at auction in New York about maybe 15 years ago, and that was estimated at, I think, around $30 to $40 million, and it ended up being sold for $119 million. The purchaser loaned it to the Museum of Modern Art, but the chairman of Sotheby's at the time, because this is a world record and world news for the art market. But I thought it was fascinating because the chairman of Sotheby's talked about this pastel sketch. He called it a painting, but it was a drawing.
Wow.
And I thought that was kind of fascinating to me because, when something is a high enough value or price, the perception of it changes. But I thought it was a big mistake, frankly, on the part of the chairman of Sotheby's at the time, because it was a great opportunity to say, here is the most expensive drawing ever sold. And drawings are the essence of an artist's work. That's the nucleus of where it all starts, the artist's ideas. But anyway, so that was just a little aside there.
Oh, that's fascinating that there's kind of a hierarchy between drawing and painting and prints.
Yeah.
And that this kind of blurs the lines between painting and print. So it's an interesting, unique piece.
But the market perceives it as a painting.
Right. All right. Next up today, we're going to be talking about The Fortune Teller by Abraham Williamson. We're not sure about the exact date for this piece. It was painted somewhere between 1650 and 1672. But as you can see, there is a fortune teller right here on the left, telling the fortune of this gentleman. I don't know a lot about this artist, but I feel like I can definitely see maybe influences of Caravaggio with the dramatic lights and darks. It's very theatrical, and you can see the light source coming in from the left and then casting these deep shadows on the right. But what about you, David? What, in your opinion, makes this a top-tier artwork?
Well, when I saw this, when this was brought to me years ago, it had never been it hadn't been cleaned in over 100 years, and so it was quite dirty. So you couldn't really appreciate that much. But the amulet here in the fortune teller's hand, I couldn't see that when I bought the painting. The painting still, even though it was dirty, it was very impressive to me. And so I thought, even though at the time I didn't know who the artist was, because it's not signed, I purchased it anyway because I thought it was just a great painting. And of course I thought of Rembrandt also. And so this was painted, as Anna was saying, at the end of Rembrandt's life. So it took about a year and a half to authenticate.
Wow.
And I did enlist an art historian on the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee staff to help me with it. There was only really one expert, it turns out, on the artist, and he was a professor in Paris, and there was an exhibition at the Grand Palais in Paris in the late 70s, and they published a book, and it was about the famous family of painters, the Linane brothers. And so in the catalog, there was a whole chapter on this artist.
Really?
On Abraham Williamson's. And he was called at the time the master of the cap. That's what they called him, rather than using his name until they discovered his name.
Why did they call him the master of the cap?
Because of the caps in the painting, the types of hats that they would wear.
Interesting.
But when I finally got a hold of the catalog from the exhibition at the Grand Palais from the late 70s, as I mentioned, a whole chapter on his work. And so they had reproductions of the paintings. There were the Louvre Museum owns 2 Abraham Wilson's paintings, and the Metropolitan Museum in New York owns 2. The Pushkin Museum in Moscow owns 1. The Art Institute of Chicago owns 1. The Cleveland Museum actually owns 3. And there are some others. But once I saw the catalog and the reproductions of the Williamson's paintings in all these museums, the iconography, everything, it was unmistakable that the painting was his work. And the trees that he put in his compositions, very few leaves on the, stylistically they all look very similar. It's quite dark, but the woman at the well, this was a subject matter that was in a number of his paintings. And as Anna was saying, it's the fortune teller. This was very popular in the 1500s and 1600s in Europe. For these fortune tellers would go around, and for a few coins they would read their fortune. He's reading his palm. When I was in Paris the last trip, I went to the Louvre Museum, and I ran into one of the curators, and I said that we had this painting by Williamson's, what it was. So she says, go to rooms 28 and 29 in the Louvre Museum, and you'll see his paintings and the Linnaean brothers' paintings. And interestingly enough, there was a painting very, very similar to this.
Really?
But it was by one of the Linnaean brothers. And so my feeling is that Abraham Williamson's worked for the Linnaeans, and they didn't want him to get any fame. So they wouldn't allow him to put his name on his paintings.
Wow, they had that kind of power?
Oh yes, they did. They were quite famous. So, but we figured it out.
That's amazing. I just love the expression of the person having his fortune told, like he's looking directly out at the viewer, and he's almost taking his hand away, like he's been caught doing something he shouldn't be. Just, it's very expressive.
And if you look at the different subjects in the painting, some are looking at us, some are looking away, all different directions. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah. And did you say this piece had to be cleaned because it was so dark?
Yes, it was dirty. It hadn't been cleaned for over 100 years. And so, as I mentioned, after it was cleaned, we discovered the amulet in the fortune teller's hand, which wasn't visible. So the painting was bought by a physician and his wife from Chicago. They were in Paris at a flea market during the 1930s Depression. And that's where they bought it. But they never bothered to contact anybody at the Art Institute of Chicago. Unbeknownst to them, the Art Institute has a Williamson's in their collection. So, lucky for us, we ended up with it.
Wow. Amazing. How long did it take to clean something of this scale?
It took a couple months.
Yeah.
Now, the frame, by the way, is not the original frame from the 1600s. It's a 19th century frame.
Oh, okay.
But it's still a beautiful frame. And it's the frame that I bought it in.
Okay. All right. Now we've moved on to our next painting here. It's titled Les Artistes du Cirque, which translates to the circus performers. It was painted by Kees van Dongen in 1904. Kees van Dongen, if you don't know, is a very famous post-impressionist artist. He's collected in museums all over the world, including the Milwaukee Art Museum has a really great painting by him called Woman with Cat. So if you're nearby, you should go check it out. This painting here is a really special piece in the collection. I know I've heard you talk about it many times, especially the first time you saw it, I think was kind of a formative moment for you. So could you share with our viewers where you were the first time you saw this and
Sure.
what it was that's so special?
I was at the Navy Pier Show in Chicago, the big international art exposition. This was in 1988, I'm pretty sure. And it was being exhibited by a Canadian dealer. And I saw it from about 300 feet away, took my breath away. And I said to myself, I'm in trouble because I'm going to have to buy it. And I did. And I took it home, and it hung over our fireplace mantle for many years. And then years later, I thought it would be interesting to put it on the internet. So we posted it on artnet.com. And within 24 hours, we had 2 museums contact us that said they wanted to exhibit it.
Whoa.
So I was contacted by a woman named Anita Hotmans, and she was the Dutch government's art history research expert. And it turned out that when she was researching Van Dongen's work at the Wildenstein Institute in Paris, because at the time they were putting together the catalogue raisonné on Van Dongen's work, and this was, there was a transparency that we had sent Wildenstein, so it could be in the catalog. And the catalog has not been produced yet, but it is acknowledged, and whenever that gets produced, it will be in the catalog raisonné. But in 2008, Anita Hotmans contacted me, and she was organizing at the time the first retrospective for Kees van Dongen that hadn't been held in over 60 years. So the first country to exhibit this painting was Monaco in Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
And Kees van Dongen, he lived in Paris, but he also lived in Monaco.
Okay.
And so the new National Museum of Monaco was the first place that this was exhibited. And so when you get a painting loaned to different museums, everybody wants to know, well, how much do I get paid for lending the painting? Well, the truth is, you don't get any money. You get the prestige of having it in a major museum, and when the museum publishes a major catalog, it's reproduced in the catalog.
Yeah.
And that's where the value gets added to the painting. So theoretically, every time the painting's in another major museum, the value goes up at least $100,000.
Wow.
So what the museums do pay for, or they get sponsors for, is to pay for the shipping door to door, so it's covered from the time it leaves here to the time it's returned, and also they pay for the insurance. They insure it while it's out of our hands. And so the Medrano Circus is very, as you mentioned, was very important to all the Parisian artists at the time. It's a circus that was up near the Montmartre, and all the artists, important artists of the day, would paint at the circus. Toulouse-Lautrec, Matisse, Chagall, and so then the next museum that exhibited was the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and I went to that opening. So I went to the opening at the Montreal Museum. The director of the Picasso Museum, his name is Pepe Serra, he thought the show was so great that he said he wanted to take the show to Barcelona and have it at the Picasso Museum.
Really?
And because of Franco, the dictator in Spain, at that time Picasso never went to his own museum.
Really?
But he did donate 2,700 artworks, early works from his early periods to that museum. But fascinating, Kees van Dongen and Picasso were actually roommates in Paris around 1900.
Really?
But they were fighting over one of the famous models, Fernand Olivier, and Picasso won that. But anyway, so that was kind of a fascinating connection also. So it was really a fantastic experience going to the opening at the Picasso Museum. And the guest of honor was Maya Picasso, one of Picasso's daughters.
Wow.
So that was exciting, having dinner with her. When I was introduced to her, she reached out her hand like this.
Yeah.
I had to kiss her palm of her hand.
Really?
Fortunately, this was long before COVID,
Yeah.
so I didn't have any problems. It worked out okay. But anyway, so then after that, the painting went back to Rotterdam, where the artist grew up. That's where he was from.
Yeah.
Then it went to Paris, to the Museum of Modern Art. Then it went to Vienna, Austria, to the Albertina Museum. And all the shows were featured one-person shows of Van Dongen, except the one in Vienna at the Albertina. That was called Matisse and the Fauves. And of course the Fauve art, this is classic Fauve painting, 1905, at the beginning of the Fauve art movement. So it's a very special piece.
Yeah, the Fauves, that translates to the wild beasts, and they were known for their kind of outrageous uses of color in non-traditional ways that kind of evoked emotion, and I feel like we can definitely see that here. In the shadows, there's this kind of glowing red, and I just love that Van Dongen didn't leave any space wasted. He used the shadow areas and created kind of dynamic light there too.
Yes.
So it's really a special piece.
We actually know who these circus performers are.
Really?
They were famous performers from the Medrano Circus. Her name was Marie Cachon, and his name was Djali.
What were they known for?
Aerialists.
Oh. Yeah. In this depiction of them, they almost look a little bit uncomfortable in the spotlight. Like she has her arms crossed, and he looks a little stiff to me. So I wouldn't have guessed that they were actually very famous and well known. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So that's Kees van Dongen at the best.
All right, now we are standing in front of this lovely painting by John Stuart Curry. It's titled Sketching Wisconsin. Curry was a regionalist. He was an American artist, and he believed that truly American art would come out of small towns and rural areas rather than big cities. And this painting that we're standing in front of right now is actually a self-portrait of Curry, and he's with his wife, or his second wife, Kathleen. What's kind of fun about this piece is that it has a painting within the painting. So she's painting the scene that we're looking at in his painting. And another fun fact about this piece is that there's actually another painting by Curry depicting the same landscape, and it's housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And it's called Wisconsin Landscape, so you can go and look that up. But David, what makes this a top-notch work of art in your collection?
Yes. So, like you were saying, John Stuart Curry being one of the three great regionalists, along with Grant Wood and Thomas Hart Benton, and the fact that he actually was the first artist in residence of any university in the United States.
Really?
And in 1937, he was hired by the University of Wisconsin Madison Agricultural School. They built him a studio on the campus in Madison and paid him a whopping, at that time, $4,000, which was a lot of money back there during the Depression. And he traveled around Wisconsin teaching art. The other significant piece of information is the fact that this was painted in 1946, which is the year he passed away.
Oh.
And he was from originally, you know, he was Scottish, and but he went to Europe in the late 1920s,
Yeah.
and he studied in Paris. So he learned the French technique en grise, a painting with primarily black, white, gray, which we don't see the ideas of that in this painting, but the next painting that we're going to talk about does. So we'll save that for the next painting. But the other fact that makes it special is the fact that he portrays himself here as a farmer rather than an artist.
Yeah.
And so you see the farm tractor and the farmscape and the barn and so on. So he was, of course, a champion of civil rights as well as animal rights. And he did a painting when he was in Madison at the university in the law library called the Freedom of the Slaves. And so that was very important for him. But sadly, he had health issues. He had heart problems. And he died at the age of 48 in 1946.
Wow.
This is painted.
Yeah. Another thing that struck me too was that he chose to do his self-portrait outside, and he's painting in plein air, which to me I feel like that kind of reinforces his commitment to regionalism and just that there's this connection to the land, and he's physically present with it and he's painting. And I just think there's probably more of the spirit of the land in this work because he was actually outside painting what he was seeing.
Yes, and as you mentioned, the Metropolitan Museum's John Stewart Curry painting, which was from 1937, has the identical barn in it and the same lake in the background.
Yeah.
Classic.
It's a great piece. Alrighty, now we are standing in front of another painting by John Stewart Curry. It's called Cockfight in Cuba. It was painted in 1946, and as the title suggests, it depicts a cockfight, which is illegal now, but at one time it was a common sporting event for people to put two roosters in a pen and watch them fight till the death, and so that's what we're looking at right here.
What's fascinating about this painting is that we talked about the other John Stewart Curry earlier, and this particular painting is an anti-cockfight painting.
Really?
So, at first glance, you would think that this is not along the lines of preserving animals.
Right.
But you have the African man in the lower corner, lower right corner, reaching out to save the birds from killing each other. So he's trying to save them.
Yeah.
And it's a totally unique subject matter for John Stewart Curry. Of course, as we talked about, was a champion of animal rights as well as civil rights.
Right.
But how did he happen to do such an unusual subject?
Yeah.
A bank, in January of 1946, a bank sent him to Cuba and Panama.
Yeah.
And he did this, the only painting of a cockfight that he did in his life. But what's so remarkable to me is the fact that the painting is en grise, which in the French technique of painting primarily with black, white, and gray, it was thought of by a major American New York art dealer as being an unfinished painting when they exhibited this painting in 1990 because of the fact that it is mostly black, white, and gray. However, what they failed to do was to do their homework.
Yeah.
They didn't know that he studied in Paris in the late 1920s, so he learned the French technique en grise.
Yeah.
So it's a classic great painting.
Wow.
So it's one of my favorite paintings that I've owned in 58 years in the art business.
Yeah. How did you first come across this piece?
So it was offered to me,
Okay.
and I was fortunate enough to be able to buy it.
Wow.
So all the people in the background are placing bets, and the two guys in the foreground with their arms outstretched own the birds, and they're taking bets. So that's what this is all about.
Yeah. What really struck me about the piece was his brushwork. I just feel like he did a great job conveying that sense of frenetic energy of these people watching the fight unfold. And another thing that stood out to me too is you were talking about how it's mostly black, white, and gray, but the few areas that do have color are on the roosters, and then I guess the blood that's being shed, and then there's a few of the crowdspeople who have reds in their cheeks, which I just thought was interesting because even though they're not physically shedding the blood of the roosters, they're still participating, and that color shows up on their skin. And so it really is a powerful painting, subject matter wise. So
very good.
Great. Next, we are going to be covering this lovely piece right here by Joan Miro. It's untitled, but we refer to it by its inscription, which is "For Louis Broder, in homage to the editions in all friendship." This piece was made around 1970. It's a very representational example of what Joan Miro was known for in terms of his style and subject matter. He was associated with the Surrealist and Dada movements. I was researching him for this podcast, and he actually started out in business school, which I didn't know before. And then he had a nervous breakdown, and he switched to making art. So I thought that was kind of an interesting fun fact. But what stands out to me about this piece is the media used here. It's a mixed media piece. He used watercolor, crayon, and ink on top of a lithograph. And what's different about that is that most of the pieces in our collection and in the market in general are his lithographs or different printmaking media, but this actually has the artist's touch on where he used.
Original.
Yeah, it has original markings. But what stands out about it to you?
Well, of course, I love Miro's work, pretty much all of it. One of my favorite artists, he always has been. But funny thing is, when I was in high school, I loved his work.
Yeah.
But his name was Joan Miro.
Yeah.
Joan Miro. And I thought he was a she. Until I opened up a huge monograph on his book. And there he was.
Wow.
In the front of the book.
Yeah.
So.
Joan Miro.
Joan Miro. And in terms of the iconography, you were mentioning the surrealism in his work.
Yeah.
And he was always concerned about sexuality with his work. And so from that standpoint, this is a great example of his work, because in terms of the symbolism, the circle format, for him, that represented the female symbolism, the egg shape.
Okay.
And the male symbols are represented by these shapes here, which are repeated.
Oh. Interesting. Yeah, when I was researching this artist, I found a quote from him about his process, and he said, "Every idea has to develop in my unconscious. Absolutely irrational, sudden, unconscious. I start off blindly. For me, form is never something abstract. It is always a sign of something. It is always a man, of a bird, or something else." So I'm really glad you pointed out what those different shapes meant, because when I was looking at it, trying to figure out what the signs were, I couldn't come up with anything close to that.
Yes,
So.
and Miro, he was always interested in the cosmos.
Yeah.
Personally, it's always interested me. So you have the star symbols representing the cosmos. It all ties together.
Yeah. Well, great. Alrighty, we've moved on to our next piece here. It's titled Mustang Ballet by Charlie Dye. It was painted around 1960. And I have to say, I'm really fond of this piece because before I moved to Milwaukee, I lived in Texas, and every time I look at it, I just feel transported back there. So I'm a fan of Dye's work. But what I really love most about this piece is the energy and just the dynamic movement of the horses. And I really feel that his title, Ballet, captures that kind of theatrical movement of the horses that we see. And this piece is really a great example of his work. He was known for doing kind of Western scenes with cowboys and cattle, and it's a really great example of his style.
I like it because it's called Mustang Ballet, and that was my first car.
Oh,
a
really?
1965 Ford Mustang convertible.
Nice.
Sorry for that comment.
What color was it?
Maroon.
Maroon. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you like about the piece?
I like the fact that he has his branding iron with his initials,
CD.
with his signature.
Yeah.
CD, Charlie Dye.
Yeah, when I was reading about Charlie Dye's history, he actually grew up around horses, and his father was a trail hand down in Texas. So I think it's really important to just highlight that Dye knew how to ride horses and was around them, because I feel like that really is one reason why he was able to capture just the movement and anatomy of the horses so well. And I was actually reading that he was in an accident where he fell off of a horse, and he was in the hospital recovering, and it was actually during that time that he started making art. And then after he was fully recovered, he went to the school at the Art Institute of Chicago, and that's where he was trained. Is there anything else about this piece that makes it top tier?
Well, of course, I really like Western light,
Yeah,
and this really captures that.
definitely.
And as you were saying, the energy of it,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that it's titled the Mustang Ballet,
Mm-hmm.
they're like dancing.
They are.
So it's,
There's choreography there. They each have their own role, and
yes.
the movement is so...
Yeah, and this is the size, it's a large scale painting for him.
Yeah?
It's a major painting.
Right. And you were telling me about the frame before, too. Can you tell our
Hand
viewers?
carved frame. All these lines had to be put in by hand.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, classic Western.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of Articulating with David Barnett. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. All of the art featured on our podcast is available here at the David Barnett Gallery. And we would love it if you could come visit us in person. We're at 1024 East State Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Or you can visit us online at www.davidbarnettgallery.com. If you have any art topics that you want articulated in a future podcast, please let us know in the comments. See you next time.
Thank you for listening, and hope to see you in the gallery.